Hi, I'm Cameron.
And I'm Hayden.
And this is
Until the End of Crime.
Hayden. What is the wildest thing you've ever done to improve your physique?
What a weird question. Well, I had surgery. I had gastric sleeve done in 2015, 16.
15, I think.
Yeah. And I lost 280 pounds in 9 months and
You did.
continued to lose weight until I lost about 300. And well, things have gone from there where they've gone. But that's probably the most drastic or wildest thing I've done. I don't know. If we're talking about wild in hindsight, taking pills that weren't like monitored by the FDA, that were like stimulants, it may seem more financially practical than having surgery, but really and truly,
But at what risk?
right, they're not regulated by the FDA.
Right.
And so who knows what I ingested. Other wild things that I've done when I was not eating carbohydrates. I would do anything but eat carbs.
Anything but?
Essentially, like after I had surgery, and I would sometimes want like something other than just meat and chili, I would add almonds to it. And I would have the almonds in my chili. And that's kind of wild in hindsight. I drank my coffee black. No sweetener, no cream.
I thought you did that because you read something that said that psychopaths drank their coffee black.
Well, I stopped doing it because I was like, that makes me look like a psychopath.
That's right. And then whenever I was getting my master's degree, I took that tidbit and for one of my discussion assignments, I found out the source of it was actually that people who like their coffee to be really, really sweet are usually perceived by others as having like a sweet personality, and that people who drink their coffee bitter tend to have a more bitter personality, and that was what evolved into.
Honestly, that tracks for me. I believe it.
Because you like it bitter or sweet?
Because I also scored a higher than average deviancy on the MMPI for psychopathy.
Got it. We've derailed a little bit, but
No, wildest things for physique. I think that sums it up.
I did really, 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 really strict paleo for a period.
I feel like I remember that.
It was before I met you, but I've definitely talked about it, and it has influenced the way that I eat, even to this day. But for 31 days, I did really strict paleo, and I lost 25 pounds, which is almost a pound a day, which is not healthy, not advisable, but I did that.
You ate that, or I guess really you didn't eat that.
It was really limited in what I did eat.
Was it like a lot of meat?
It was meat and a lot of vegetables and some fruits and nuts.
Well, I know you love a good nut.
I actually don't. I'm not big into, like, I could put almond milk in my coffee, but I ended up preferring to just not drink coffee.
Almond milk is gross.
Because it tastes like a nut.
It doesn't taste like anything. It tastes like fucking water with some sediment in it.
It tastes like a nut to me.
I don't like it. I don't like milk alternatives. I know that they're helpful for some people. That's not it for me.
I agree with that.
Yeah. I'll latch onto the udder before I drink some alternative milk.
Okay. All right. On that note, because I'm done with that conversation, we're going to go to...
How long did you breastfeed? Okay, did you see? You know what? This isn't a conversation for right now, but there was a Redditor who posted about, am I the asshole for leaving my to-be husband at the altar because he's 30 years old and I caught my future mother-in-law nursing him. And
resoundingly no.
it was like, I've learned that in secret, whenever my husband experiences anxiety or whatever, he goes and nurses his mother. And I'm like, what do you mean he nurses his mother? This can't be real.
Not with teeth.
There can't be people who are nursing their mother at 30, right? I mean, never say never, but it's a hard to believe story.
Yeah. I think part of my issue is I'm refusing to actually think about it.
You're tired of engaging with me.
Not that I'm tired of engaging with you, but you did bring it back to breastfeeding and then took us here.
Well, because I said I would latch onto an udder before I had an alternative milk source.
Yeah. And then we were done with the conversation.
Right.
And we were going to Toronto.
Oh, yes. Toronto. How does Priyanka say it?
It's Toronto, Ontario in November 1983, where a young Malaysian man named Tien Po Sue lived. Although while in Toronto, he went by Robert. But Sue goes to the gym a lot.
How are we going to refer to
Tien Po Sue, aka Robert? Sue.
Okay.
He loves to be up in the gym working on his fitness. He pumps the iron. He's a bodybuilder who takes a lot of pride in his physique.
Okay.
He goes to the gym 2 to 3 times a day.
2 to 3 times a day? Mm-hmm. Is he working on mass? Like, does he just want to be as big as possible?
I think so.
Okay.
And despite spending so much time at this place, he keeps to himself for the most part until one day, another gym goer named Gary Eschweiler, working out near Sue, loads every weight plate in the gym onto a bar and bench presses it.
No, he doesn't.
Yes.
Every weight plate in the gym?
Yes.
Is it the world's smallest gym?
Possibly. He mentions that it is well over 400 pounds, and when he sets the bar back on the rack, it began to bend.
Why are you bringing to me a fake story today?
This is not a fake story. He told this story himself.
And embellished every detail. Got it.
Well, he clearly made a spectacle of himself because the other people in there working out began to laugh at the fact that the bar is struggling to hold up the weight that this man just bench pressed. And the widespread laughter, which is pretty rare in a gym, at least based on my experience, caught Sue's attention. Like I said, Sue takes a lot of pride in what he's capable of doing in the gym, but clearly this guy is able to outdo even him. He approaches Eschweiler, wanting to know his secret, and they strike up a gym bro friendship of sorts. Eschweiler is able, unsurprisingly, to outperform Sue in basically every exercise on every machine, and obviously outlifts him. Sue comes to view Eschweiler as a mentor because he's older than Sue, who at this point is only about 20, and he gets Eschweiler to agree to grab dinner. During their conversations, Sue asks his new gym buddy what the hell he does to get his body into the shape that it is in. And Eschweiler lets him know about this dietary supplement that he takes that is suited to his body and the nutrients that he needs, the way that his body metabolizes nutrients and so on and so forth.
And this is 1983?
Yes.
It's a weird way to talk about steroids.
Well, he tells him that this is how he's able to optimize his physical performance and get the most out of his workouts and diet. After dinner, as Sue and Eschweiler are passing down a Toronto road, Sue starts pointing out different businesses to Eschweiler. He indicates that he thinks they would be prime businesses to rob. Eschweiler says he felt that Sue was attempting to recruit him to be a crony of his and was trying to get a feel for how he'd react to the suggestion of committing crimes.
Okay.
After this, he suggests to Eschweiler that they go to the movies.
I find Sue's willingness and ready to exploit businesses for his financial gain personally more likable than his commitment to his fitness. But that's just me.
Fair enough. Sue suggests to Eschweiler that they go to the movies to watch a martial arts movie.
Did he take him on a date? Dinner and a movie? What?
I mean, I am going to get into this, but Sue is married to a woman.
Queers couldn't be married back then, so it makes sense.
Right. Well, his partner is a woman. Mm-hmm. The martial arts movie included a scene where a girl is sexually assaulted, and Eschweiler notices that Sue takes a lot of interest in this scene in particular. He's sitting up. He's reacting in a way that makes it seem as if he is taking pleasure out of this horrible scene. I believe the girl in the movie was also strangled to death after the sexual assault occurred, but I couldn't find the name of the movie, or if I did find the name of the movie, the plot points included in the case weren't prevalent enough to be in the summaries I read of martial arts movies in the early 80s. So anyway, that was a rabbit hole that I went down for a little while. At this point, Eschweiler feels as though Sue trusts him. So when
this is all in one day.
I don't think it's all in one day.
Okay.
I think they had the gym bro friendship, and that was building. They were both at the gym Sue lived at the gym basically. He was there 2 to 3 times a day.
Mm-hmm. There are people that we see every day that we are not friends with.
Sure. But they struck up a friendship.
Right.
They developed a friendship.
So this was over time. I thought it was all in one day.
Not a long period of time, but yes. I think they're seeing each other with a lot of regularity because of how much time both of them obviously are spending at the gym. I'm not saying that I know how many days Eschweiler is going to the gym or how many times a day he's going to the gym, but Sue goes 2 to 3 times and Eschweiler is benching over 400 pounds.
Okay.
So Eschweiler believes that Sue trusts him. So when Sue asks the next time they're both at the gym about the supplement, Eschweiler lets him know that it is not yet a regulated practice. And he had to give a blood sample to this doctor who he knows, who is doing this experimentally, kind of under the table.
I don't know where this case is going, because what the fuck do we have going on with this mysterious supplement that requires a blood test in 1983? And then Wu is getting aroused during a sexual assault scene in a movie. Who's the bad guy? Are they both bad guys? Because it's not shaping up positively.
Eschweiler tells Sue that if he wants to give Eschweiler a blood sample for him to pass to the doctor, he's happy to do it. But
I hate that even more.
But basically, the doctor wouldn't be happy if he found out that his information was being given out to a lot of people because he's doing this practice that's kind of shady.
Sounds illegal.
Sue is torn. He wants to optimize his performance, but the whole thing seems sketchy, right?
Wow. I can't imagine why he would think it was a touch sketch.
Giving his blood to Eschweiler to give to a doctor who Sue can't know the name of, he's not really sold.
Yeah, but he's going to do it anyway.
But after continuing to watch the level at which Eschweiler performs in the gym, Sue wants to take the supplement. Anything to be able to match Eschweiler's peak physique and performance. So Eschweiler brings in a kit that he got from the doctor, and in the locker room one day after their gym session, he watches as Sue pokes a finger and deposits the blood onto a piece of gauze.
For medical testing? Straight men are so weird. They're so dumb. Sorry, straight men.
Sue asks several times throughout this if Eschweiler is a police officer, which Eschweiler found weird, but whatever. I guess because the
whole thing is weird. It is weird on everyone's side. I don't want to hear that he thought it was weird. Fucking Mr. Eschweiler, you're a weirdo. You are all weirdos. No one is not weird in this scenario.
Well, it feels redundant to read my next line. I guess because the whole thing is pretty shady, weird questions come about.
Yeah, it's... Okay, I don't understand. I feel like you've buried the lead somewhere, but that's okay. Continue, please.
After handing his blood sample over to Eschweiler, Sue becomes very paranoid. He goes to the gym manager, John Burns, and asks if he knows about the dietary supplement based on blood work that Eschweiler uses, to which Burns responds something to the effect of, "No, that sounds silly and made up." So Sue then tells Burns that he thinks Eschweiler is a police officer.
Why is he talking?
But he becomes visibly agitated. Burns, I guess, clues Eschweiler in that Sue is worked up about him possibly being a cop, and Eschweiler gets mad. He returns the bloody gauze to Sue. The bloody gauze takes me out. He returns the bloody gauze to Sue and accuses him of not trusting him, which he makes very clear that he does not appreciate. Sue can keep his mediocre bodybuilder diet for all Eschweiler cares. After receiving the gauze and subsequently blood sample back, Sue says, and I quote, "This is how they catch killers."
Okay, DNA testing hadn't even been used yet.
Sure.
Blood groupings
Sure.
were available via blood sample, but not genetic code.
Yeah, well, it seems this statement maybe helps explain away some of his paranoia surrounding handing the sample over in the first place.
Because he's a killer.
But that struck Eschweiler as a very suspicious thing to say, especially considering that Eschweiler was an undercover police officer who was responsible for collecting the blood of a suspect in the murder of Deliana Heng, an Indonesian foreign exchange student.
So he was a cop.
Yes.
What fucking weirdos. Whatever. I already hate this story. I'm ready to leave. Whatever. Go ahead.
That's not nice.
Well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm so frustrated by these men. I don't really hate it, but I kind of hate it.
As it turns out, the gauze that Officer Eschweiler had given to Sue was not him returning his own blood, but a fake sample on a piece of gauze. The real blood sample was in a lab being matched to the suspect's blood based on evidence left at the scene, type A. And on November 17th, 1983, nearly a month after Deliana's murder, Tien Po Sue was arrested on his way into the gym that he frequented, which even at that feels like an understatement.
Okay.
I love how annoyed you are.
All of the fanfare that surrounded Eschweiler's gym antics and the mysterious nature of his workout and health routine. And then getting mad at... Listen, I know Sue's the bad guy. I get it. I know that's what we're like set up for. But the rigory of the situation and how it unfurls, I hate that cops are allowed to be so dishonest.
Well, so that's the thing. This, because it's in Canada, they could do this elaborate ruse, but this would not be something that you could do in the States.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little better for the U.S. citizenry, but it's just...
This is also 1983, so who knows if they can still do this.
It's weird. It just feels so bro-y. All of it is so bro-y, which is antithetical to my entire existence. And so...
But there's something about that I find satisfying.
I don't know. It's like...
That he like dude broed himself into being caught.
I guess. It's just weird and frustrating. But I also like, yes, I can agree with that. He did dude bro himself into a fucking corner because all he could think about was the gains. The gains, bruh. God, have you ever thought about what it would be like to be straight?
What?
It sounds so awful.
You mean a straight man?
That.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like straight women have a hard time too.
Yeah, look what we're left with.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. None too impressed.
Oh, God. The third week of October 1983 was a busy one for 17-year-old Deliana Heng, at least academically. As I mentioned, she was a foreign exchange student whose family was from Jakarta and were well-to-do. But she wasn't in Toronto alone. Her older sister, Mitty, was a student at the University of Toronto, while Deliana attended an academic program that helped foreign exchange students qualify for Canadian universities, and she had plans to start at the University of Toronto with her sister the following year. The University of Toronto was an appealing school for foreign exchange families in particular because the campus and surrounding area was known for being safe. Sending your children internationally to study is daunting and intimidating as it is, especially knowing you won't be there to protect them. So that was an important factor in choosing to send both of their daughters to Toronto.
Well, that is a miserable irony, isn't it?
Right.
So they felt like they had sent her to one of the safest places they could. And it sounds like that's not how things worked out for Deliana.
Yeah.
Where is Jakarta?
Indonesia.
Okay.
The sisters shared an apartment right by the campus, and they were not just sisters and roommates, but they were best friends. They only had a year and some change between their ages, and they opted to have lunch together almost every day during breaks in their academic schedules. They even had and wore matching necklaces with diamond-encrusted cross pendants on them. Their mother had purchased them for her daughters in Indonesia. Deliana, who was described as intelligent, beautiful, and a good student, was writing a lot of midterm papers the week of the 17th of October. A lot of hours spent studying and writing and researching. She and Mitty frequently studied together at the library, and they would often also be there with friends.
I like that these two sisters are so close, and it sounds like they were kind of nerdy together. Like they would spend time in the library and with their friends in the library.
Oh yeah. They were very good students. But also I think it makes sense that you're close if you are moved across the world to a different place and the only familiar person to you is your sister. But I think that part of the reason that they both went to the same place is because they were close as well. On Wednesday, October 19th, 1983, Deliana was at the Robarts Library on the University of Toronto's campus working on her midterms with friends. Robarts Library was a popular place for Deliana, Mitty, and friends to study since it was blocks from the Heng sisters' apartment. Late in the afternoon, around 4 p.m., Deliana packs up her stuff at the library to head home to continue working on her schoolwork there. She has to leave because, despite being surrounded by books, the ones she needs are her textbooks, and she didn't bring them with her. So she has to return to her apartment and decides to stay there to work. When she gets to her apartment building, she stops in the lobby to check the mail for her apartment. She finds that she'd received a letter from a friend, and so she takes the elevator to her floor, heads into her apartment, and begins to respond to that letter before resuming her studies. In the middle of writing the reply, there's a knock on the apartment door. Deliana and Mitty share a key to the apartment, so she likely assumes that it could be her sister returning home, which could also be an explanation for why she didn't go back to the library if she was the one with the key that day.
Right. I would hate sharing a key.
It's not ideal, especially in the 80s.
Did they have to?
I don't know, but I think they spent so much time together and they were either at the apartment together or at the library. I think that they knew where to find each other because they were either at the library or home.
Right.
Or at school during the day, and it didn't talk about either one of them having a job, but that doesn't mean that they didn't.
Yeah.
So Deliana goes to the door, which has a chain latch on it, and she opens it. Around 6 p.m., Mitty and a friend are down in the lobby waiting for Deliana to return home, since, as I mentioned, she has the key to the apartment. And before going up, because they lived in a high-rise building, before going up, they phoned the apartment from the lobby to see if Deliana was already there. But they received no answer, so they stayed in the lobby to study and chat and await Deliana's arrival. At 10 p.m., there was still no sign of Deliana, so they tried calling the apartment again, and still they were not able to get through to anyone. So they made the decision to go up to the apartment and see if maybe the phone wasn't working or there was something else going on. When they get there, they find the door unlocked, which is very unusual, but Mitty goes in to investigate. She's not in there long before running out screaming, and she calls 911. She stands in the hall with her friend, crying, because when she went into the apartment, she found Deliana bound and dead on the floor of their bathroom.
Was that chain latch broken?
Yeah. In the book, he said that there's no sign of a forced entry, but literally pieces of the chain latch are found both in and out of the apartment.
That's forced entry.
I know. He also says other things that are not true based on everything else that I found on the case.
Who wrote this book?
John Douglas.
He needs to profile himself as a liar.
Or as somebody who doesn't have a perfect
Allegedly.
memory. When detectives Rod Spencer and Michael Boyd arrive on the scene, they get a crime scene unit out to process it, starting with photographs. Deliana was found face down with an iron cord wrapped around her neck, the strap of a camera bag binding her ankles together, and marks on her wrists that appeared to be consistent with handcuffs.
Oh, God.
They examined the knot and ultimately determined that the type of knot the strap was tied in matched a knot commonly used in martial arts. From what they could see, her face had been badly beaten, and the cause of her death appeared to be strangulation, but they actually couldn't tell if it was from the beating or from being strangled.
Yeah.
But they did note that a sexual assault was apparent.
Ugh.
She was nude from the waist down and had blood smeared across her left thigh and abdomen. The detectives found it peculiar that the attack on Deliana began in the bedroom, but her body was found in the bathroom. They knew it started in the bedroom because they found clothing from her closet torn down in a pile on the floor in front of the closet, and there was blood found on the corner of the mattress. But there were marks in the carpet that indicated that she had likely been dragged by her attacker from the bedroom into the bathroom.
Why was there so much blood?
There wasn't a lot of blood. There was a little bit of blood found on the corner of the mattress.
Was it Deliana's or her attacker?
I believe it was hers.
Okay.
Also, we don't know if the beating to her face could have caused that or if the sexual assault would have caused that.
Right. Either way, how devastating and traumatic.
Yeah. Again, though, they could not figure out why that would be the case, that she would be moved to the bathroom, since all the evidence indicates that she was sexually assaulted in the bedroom. Mitty, in the meantime, is staying with a friend in a nearby apartment and is struggling to process the fact that Deliana is dead.
Yeah.
She calls her parents in Indonesia to deliver the devastating news. With the apartment deemed a crime scene, command set up a post at the complex beseeching witnesses to Deliana's walk home. Arrival at the apartment complex. Maybe they saw someone following her, or maybe they saw someone unfamiliar in the area or the complex. Maybe someone was on a floor that they hadn't been seen on before. Any information, even if it seemed inconsequential at the time. They've got officers checking the stairwells for evidence, looking in the trash bins near the apartment, hoping to find anything that they can test for potential evidence. They theorized that maybe he had thrown away like a towel or something that he had used to wipe himself off with, or to wipe evidence with, which is why they were looking in trash cans that were near the apartment or in the building as well. Crime scene undertakers are in the apartment dusting for fingerprints, and there are a lot of them that have to be processed because college students with a large social circle and many shared friends tend to have a lot of friends over.
Did they have a lot of friends?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The friends that they would study with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they are lifting fingerprints off of surfaces that might have been touched by the perpetrator during the commission of this attack. They dust Deliana's textbooks. They dust items on the coffee table, door handles, faucets, and so on and so forth. They also dust a drinking glass left near the sink, and they notice something odd about the fingerprints. fingerprints on it. Rather than horizontal fingerprints typically found on a glass by picking it up in the center of the cup, they find vertical prints around the top of the glass.
Wait, what's the difference between horizontal and vertical fingerprints?
It's just the way that they pick up the cup. So
I understand.
Grabbing around the top of the cup where your mouth would go versus picking it up in the middle of the glass.
Right. So an over the top grip versus an across the side grip.
Yes. And they hypothesized that the suspect, in an attempt to outsmart the police, tried to grab the glass on an area of its surface that would not be dusted by the police.
Oh, okay.
So they treat this drinking glass with extra care and remove it to keep in evidence.
Well, Wu is an idiot, so...
Sue.
Sorry, Sue. Sue is an idiot, so...
They take clothing from the bedroom on which semen is found. And through analysis of this, they determined the blood type of the man who committed this heinous crime to be type A. And they also discovered that he has a very rare blood type at that. He is a type A secretor.
Okay.
Fewer than 3% of the population has this specific blood type, which is great for them once they have a suspect to compare it to. Among all of the evidence that they did find...
I know that type A secretor has been paramount in the solving of other cases. And so I can't remember exactly what it is to be a type A secretor, but I know that I think that was more handy before the advent of the use of DNA.
Yeah. Among all of the evidence that they did find at the scene, one thing they were unable to locate was the necklace that Deliana and Mitty both wore all the time. They didn't wear the same necklace, but they both had the same necklace and wore it.
Right, the diamond encrusted cross.
Yes. Based on the physical evidence at the scene, the theory that the investigation into her death brings about is that after answering the door partially with the chain still engaged, the person on the other side of the door kicks the door with such force that it shatters the chain into pieces, which are found both inside the apartment and in the hall outside the door. And Deliana flees into her bedroom where she hides herself in her closet. Her assailant finds her in the closet and pulls her plus some of her clothing out, which explains the pile of clothing found in front of her closet.
Was Deliana a small young woman?
I think so. She was 17, so
Right.
Probably already that puts her at a smaller stature.
Okay. I didn't know if she were rather petite or if she were tall or maybe she had a little more meat on her bones. I didn't know. Not that I would ever want to refer to someone as an easy target, but would she be someone who would be able to physically manipulate?
There was nothing that was ever included about her size or her stature.
Okay. So I guess we'll assume average.
Yeah. After pulling her out of the closet, he forces her onto the bed, binds her ankles, handcuffs her wrists, and sexually assaults her. He then drags her into the bathroom where he uses the electrical cord of their iron to strangle her. They ask Mitty for a list of people she knew that Deliana had been around in the weeks and days leading up to her murder. They find out that she had no boyfriend, didn't date, had no known enemies, no incidents of stalking, and all of this information leads police to believe that her murderer was probably someone outside of her social circle, a stranger. That was one of the biggest discrepancies between the book and the case. Is John Douglas was like, there was no signs of forced entry and da-da-da-da-da. And so I told them that it was probably somebody who she knew, and they agreed, and that this guy was part of her social circle.
Yeah, which means, it wouldn't be a crime of opportunity if it was someone that he knew.
Right. And this causes fear to spread throughout the campus and Toronto community. Using this list that they got from Mitty, they began interviewing and ruling out all of the males on the list, most of whom volunteered saliva and blood samples. All of the names given by Mitty were ruled out, and prints found around the apartment are matched against friends from the list. The fingerprints are all found to belong to friends of the sisters, except for one set. The fingerprints left along the top edge of the drinking glass found by the sink. Now they're looking for fingerprints in criminal files. And this is 1983 still.
Oh, God.
Within the week after Deliana's tragic death. So they're doing this with paper files and their eyeballs.
That has to be such a long and arduous process. How did anyone ever get justice before computers?
Well, they have potentially 3 million charts to flip through.
3 million? In Canada? Do that many people even live there? Fucking 3 million criminal files?
A week after Deliana is found deceased, a memorial service is held for her, and there's a large turnout. The following day, police search the signatures from the guest book at the memorial service, but that doesn't bring them any closer to figuring out who her killer was. So they're back to the fingerprints. They determine the fingerprints to be a right pointer finger and a right thumb, which helps them narrow down to 2 million charts.
How? Because he's not left-handed?
It wasn't super clear, but I think that maybe the parts of the print that they had to compare to, they only had 2 million charts. I don't know. They didn't tell me.
Bringing you conjecture every time we speak.
Then they sort the fingerprints into 3 different categories. And before you ask, no, I did not know the different categories. And they start sorting them into these 3 groups, which helps narrow the number down again. Now they go from 2 million to 10,000.
Okay, now that's considerable. That's doable.
Yeah, that is a substantial drop. While some of the detectives working this case are comparing fingerprints to those of known criminals with prints on file, other officers are sent back to the neighborhood again, seeking anyone who has any recollection of the afternoon of October 19th. They want to know especially if anyone remembers seeing Deliana walking home those few blocks from the library, but they have no such luck. They utilize the media to extend their plea for information even wider, but still they get nothing. At this point, they break the seal of the crime scene and bring Mitty there to do a walkthrough, hoping that she will be able to find something out of place that they missed, since she has the advantage of having resided in the space.
That has to be so hard. That has to be emotionally daunting, grueling.
I imagine. But there is nothing that she's able to discern that helps them get closer to solving her sister's murder.
Great. So she had to face that trauma for no purpose. I understand they had to try.
Yeah, it was worth a shot because there could have been something. It just turned out in this case there wasn't. So now November rolls around and they still have not much to show in the way of suspects until they find a potential fingerprint match to the prints from the glass, which still feels quick between October 19th and the beginning of November. They inspect this set of prints closely against the prints left on the glass and are able to determine that they finally have a match to someone who, up until this point, has not come up in the investigation. Tien Robert Po Sue. And here's what they learn about Sue. He is 20 years old, married, and originally from Malaysia. He came to Canada on a student visa that has expired since his arrival 3 years prior. He has an interest and background in martial arts, and he has been arrested. They're not convinced that he is their guy, though, because his arrest was for a property crime, not a violent crime. But they know at this point that they either need to rule this guy out or in.
Well, it sounds like he's their only real lead.
Yeah. So with that, they put a folder together with a picture lineup of men, including a picture of Sue, and they have Mitty review the folder. None of the men in the folder stand out to her as someone she recognizes. Then they specifically indicate Sue and ask if she is sure she does not know this man from anywhere, because as far as their evidence shows, he was in her apartment.
Right.
Again, she tells them that she does not recognize him. They follow the same procedure with a friend of the sisters who has the same response as Mitty. They recognize none of the men in the folder. Detectives talk to people at the gym Sue goes to 2 to 3 times a day, but no one there has ever felt the need to fear him or has seen him as someone with violent tendencies. And this furthers their confusion about this seemingly non-violent man and whether or not he could be responsible for Deliana's death. Unable to eliminate or include him, they decide they want to get a sample of his blood to test if Sue is a type A secretor. But although he doesn't seem to have any violence in his background, they read the arrest report for his property crime and know that based on his response to the police in that instance, he will not respond well to being approached by cops outright. And this concerns them because at this point, their case is wholly circumstantial.
Doesn't even sound circumstantial. They have some fingerprints.
That's circumstantial.
Barely. It's barely enough
That's one piece of circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, you're not making an arrest off that.
No.
Certainly not a conviction.
Right.
What is a property offense?
I don't know.
Okay, it's just a weird phrasing. Like, was it vandalism? Was it...
I don't know. What I know is I struggled to find information about this case. So the information that I found, I pieced together and took it at face value. And that's what I know. Property crime. Non-violent.
Okay.
They need something to directly connect Sue to the semen left on the clothing taken from the scene as evidence, because he could claim the fingerprints left on the glass were from a chance run-in with Deliana, where he came up to the apartment and they chatted, especially since his home away from home, the gym, is only blocks from her apartment.
That would be so unlikely.
Yeah, but reasonable doubt.
Right. Wait, he could say that him and Deliana were having an affair.
Right. So knowing that it would be to the detriment of the investigation, they devise a plan, and you are never going to guess what it is. They send in an undercover police officer with a bodybuilding background to befriend him and use a dietary supplement ruse to collect Sue's blood.
I want to imagine the straight male collective that came up with this idea. Do you think...
You want to congratulate them because it worked?
No, I want to ask how many episodes of The Stooges they watched before they put this into fucking action. Just because it worked doesn't mean it was clever. I'm glad it worked.
Right. I didn't mention this before, and I'm just dropping it in now, but the martial arts movie that Sue took Eschweiler to see has a sexual assault and murder that basically matches the sexual assault and murder that took place in Deliana and Mitty's apartment.
You didn't say that earlier?
I mentioned that there was a scene where a woman was sexually assaulted and that I believed that she was strangled.
Okay.
So, of course, between that and the statement that Sue made to Eschweiler when he returned the fake blood sample about that being how killers get found out, Eschweiler knew that they had the right guy, even if the evidence was still only circumstantial. I mentioned already that the lab tested the blood from Sue's sample and found it to be type A, but it was inconclusive on whether or not he was a secretor.
Okay.
Either way, they were able to get a search warrant on his house to search for more evidence that could tie Sue to the crime. They execute the search warrant while Sue's wife is home, which is how she found out about his arrest. And during the arrest, he claimed to have no involvement in Deliana's murder. While in the house conducting their search, they find several interesting things that also lend to circumstantial evidence, such as a knot matching that of the camera bag strap used to bind Deliana's ankles together tied around the handle of the refrigerator, mixed martial arts magazines, pornography, handcuffs which were determined to match the ligature marks on Deliana's wrists, a book checked out from a Toronto library titled The Rapist File,
Oh my God.
which is a series of stories written by convicted rapists, including why they exhibited certain behaviors and performed certain actions that would become part of their modus operandi, and how they got caught.
What is this book? What is this?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like it should. It doesn't seem like it should be for public libraries.
It's so weird because I think that we have a right to information and knowledge. And I think people have a right to share what they know or their experience. But there are some times where I'm like, this feels so morally gray.
Yeah.
And there's also this kind of morbid fascination where, I mean, we do a true crime podcast. You did Junko Furuta 2 weeks ago. And it just feels like almost creating a type of voyeurism out of true crime and incredibly deviant sexual acts like rape. I don't know. That feels like a wild text. Wherever it is, I hope there are no more copies in circulation.
I just hope it's in like a restricted section of the library.
So you have to be accepted to Hogwarts first now.
Right.
Got it.
Right. Or you have to be a certain age. One of the two.
There has never been anything more millennial said on a podcast.
A restricted section.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta be accepted to Hogwarts.
Yeah, I didn't bring that.
With dogs named Molly and Jenny.
Well.
And what's left of a decal that says,
Whoa.
Hogwarts wasn't hiring, so I teach muggles. Or I teach muggles because Hogwarts wasn't hiring.
Hogwarts wasn't hiring, so I teach muggles instead. One of the stories mentions that one of the rapists would get sexual satisfaction from watching himself strangle women in front of mirrors, which they felt was a probable explanation for why Sue had dragged Deliana into the bathroom before strangling her, since that was where the only mirror in the apartment was located.
That's disturbing.
Yeah. But the most important piece of evidence they find is a diamond-encrusted cross pendant necklace matching that of the one they have seen Mitty wearing, knowing that Deliana's was taken from the scene. Sue's wife says that it belongs to her.
Oh, does it?
But reveals it was a gift from Sue that he presented her with in the days following Deliana's murder. when they bring the information of what they found during their search to Sue. Upon hearing about the handcuffs and the cross necklace, he begins to cry.
Oh, Sue cried?
Yeah. And they gladly hand him a clean napkin with which he wipes his tears and nose. And then they take the napkin and send it to the lab to be tested.
Find out he's a type A secretor again.
Which is ultimately how they are able to confirm that Sue does not only have type A blood, but he is also a secretor.
Okay. I don't guess most people know if they're a type A secretor. I have type A blood. I'm A positive. I wonder if I'm a secretor.
You would be rare.
It fits.
March 18th, 1985. Sue is tried in the Supreme Court of Ontario. In attendance are Mitty and her parents, and Sue pleads not guilty.
Okay, why? Did he not already admit to it?
No.
Oh, he just started crying in the...
Right. Well, I think you can cry and admit behind the scenes and then still plea.
Yeah, that's fair.
The trial lasts 7 days, during which the prosecution brings in a tool expert who is able to determine that the necklace found in Sue's home and the necklace Mitty wears were made by the same jeweler and were both purchased in Indonesia. Almost certainly both purchased by Deliana and Mitty's mother and presented to them as gifts from her. Mm-hmm. I almost included a joke about they bring a tool expert who determines that Sue is a tool. And I was like, no, it's too good. It's such a sophisticated joke.
Far too esoteric for our listeners.
Right. During the trial is when the undercover operation is revealed to Sue, the defense team, and the media. On March 27th, after deliberating for 3 hours, the jury returns a guilty verdict. And while Sue is being escorted out in handcuffs, he exclaims, to no one in particular, I did not kill Deliana Heng. I am innocent.
Okay, party. That's not what the evidence points to.
That's not what your conviction says.
Yeah.
As far as the law is concerned, you are guilty. In the newspaper on March 31st, the Heng family ran an appreciation post in the newspaper thanking the jury, Justice John O'Driscoll, the 2 Crown attorneys, Paul Culver and Christine McGoey, Toronto Police Homicide Division, and everyone else who provided them with, quote, moral support and who assisted in bringing justice to the murder trial, unquote, and God. Eventually in prison, Sue confessed to the killing. People in the area appreciated the timely arrest of this sadistic killer and attributed the swift police work with saving the lives of other potential victims.
Hard to imagine someone who wanted to watch himself strangle someone in the mirror wouldn't do it again.
Right. Or at least who maybe read that in a book or in a story written by another rapist and was like, oh yeah, let me try that.
What would be the next MO that I can try?
Right. That's actually really disturbing because he could have just gone down the list of everyone else's
right.
MO. I hadn't thought about that. I thought he was like looking to see which one would maybe suit his desires. I don't know. A first-degree murder conviction mandates a life sentence. Therefore, Sue was sentenced to life in prison, but it seems that parole can be sought after 25 years. In 2002, after serving 19 years, he appealed using a clause in the criminal code called the Faint Hope Clause. This is a Canadian law that allows for offenders who have been sentenced to life in prison to seek early parole after serving 15 years.
Why? Why? Okay, hold on. What case was it where Colin Pitchfork got to go out and just have fucking day passes while he was in prison and then got paroled? And then Mary Vincent's killer paroled. Now that's American.
No, he was released. Well, yeah, you've got England and you've got America.
Take out the America one because we're tough on crime. Canada and London, you can just kill people. Faint Hope Clause.
This is Canada.
I know.
You said in London.
I think I said in London and Canada.
Okay.
Whatever. If you were, I was going to say if you were ruled by a monarch, you make bad decisions, but we were also ruled by a monarch. So, yeah.
So this clause was repealed in 2011.
Good. Thank you, Canada.
Although people convicted before December 2nd, 2011 are still able to use it. Sue's appeal was denied.
Also, just for the record, to our Canadian listeners, I do love you, and I often think about moving to Canada. Me and my partner have a conversation about it all the time. And if therapists made more money in Canada, I feel like we probably would have already started the move. So I love you. I can't wait to live in you one day. Sorry for being so hard on your justice system.
Justice David McCombs did not believe that any jury would be able to look at the details of Deliana's murder and find in favor of Sue's early parole. Because how it works is they have to go in front of a jury for this faint hope thing. And first it has to be accepted by the court.
Okay.
Or the crown? I don't know. And then a jury has to examine the details of the crime and make a recommendation on whether or not they would approve the parole. And then it goes to a Supreme Court. But this justice said, no jury is you're never going to get past the first step. Mm-hmm. So don't bother. And don't bother filing another appeal before you have served your 25 years. Sue's appeal included letters and affidavits from members of his family and Christians who hoped to convince Judge McCombs that Sue was a reformed man who had converted to Christianity himself and was in no way a threat to the community.
What Christians?
Probably people who work with the prison and try to, Jesusify the prisoners.
I've been Jesusified.
His appeal is pretty stupid because he doesn't even have good behavior on his side. Because while incarcerated, he was moved at least 6 times, where each time he was provided an opportunity to complete a sex offender treatment program, all of which failed. He never completed one. He was a drug dealer, a rule breaker, and was found on more than one occasion to be in possession of weapons. First wife divorced him.
First wife?
And after remarrying during his incarceration, his second wife wrote a letter asking that he be released so he could return to his place of birth, Malaysia, and join her. If he is ever paroled, he will automatically be deported back to Malaysia.
I just doubt the Malay people want him.
Don't know who would. All of that to say that Jennifer Crawford, a prosecutor, relayed to Justice McCombs that Sue has never expressed genuine remorse for Deliana or her family, refuses to provide any insight into what propelled him to attack Deliana in the first place, has not completed sex offender treatment, and has been evaluated by a psychiatrist who diagnosed him as someone with narcissistic personality disorder with indications of sexual deviance, indicating a sexual preference for female children and potential psychopathy.
No, let's keep him locked.
Right. Clearly, the judge found the prosecution's evidence to hold true. And I mentioned already that I had a hard time finding anything about this case at first, which did make me want to cover it even more because it felt like Deliana's story needed to be told. But I think that the revolution that took place on the same Wednesday, October 19th, 1983, which is also known as Bloody Wednesday in Grenada, wherein Prime Minister Maurice Bishop was assassinated at the age of 40, may have overshadowed this case a little.
That makes sense.
Yeah. I also mentioned the Crown Attorney, Christine McGoey, and this is me. I read a line in something, I don't know for sure, but it seems like what I read, she was the first female to be appointed to a position. I'm not sure if it's Crown Attorney or if there was another one later in her career, but she's somebody who has historical prevalence.
Oh, wow.
In some capacity that I did not bring to the table. I'm so sorry.
Well, she's something important sometime, somewhere.
Yes. You should know her name.
Just not why I should know it.
And that is the case of the murder of Deliana Heng, a 17-year-old Indonesian foreign exchange student just trying to get an education in Canada. I have no idea how he even, did he follow her home? I don't know.
What's the connection? How did he know that Deliana was a good target?
Right.
Did he just happen to pass her by as she was walking by his gym? Did she look particularly childlike? Did she look particularly underage?
That's possible.
If the psychiatrist thought that he might have a predilection for pedophilia, I think
female children.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It raises the question of why would he pick Deliana? What was it? Which it doesn't.
Not just that, but how did he find her apartment. Like, I think that's what the police kept going back to. He had to follow her.
Right. At some point in time.
So somebody had to see somebody following her at some point, whether they noted it or not.
Yeah. I think that's tough. Maybe in 1983, I would think differently about it, but we're not forced to pay attention to anybody.
True.
In our society, things can happen all around me and I have no idea what's going on because I'm looking at my phone or I am invested in some other train of thought that has pulled me out of the real now and present. And so people daydreamed in the 1980s. They had things that could pull their focus. So I think it's a little unfair to think that all of these people that lived in this high rise would have been paying attention. But it is fair to say,
or
at
in
least
the blocks surrounding. Yeah.
Someone somewhere saw something. So maybe, like you said, that assassination in Grenada, that could have easily pulled focus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm of a couple of minds when it comes to this case. The Canadian police being able to kind of run this sting operation / entrapment scenario. Typically, I'm not a fan of it, right? We talked about that with Rodney Hayden. We don't necessarily like to see people get set up. But by the same token, Sue actually did something very, very bad. He murdered somebody.
Right.
And raped somebody, sexually assaulted somebody. So do the ends justify the means? In this instance, for me, yes.
Right.
But I think it also raises questions of what should we accept? What should we tolerate?
Is it different, though, than following someone around and collecting a discarded cup?
No, kind of.
It's a little bit different. I don't feel like it rises to the occasion of entrapment. They didn't.
They just why.
Collected the blood sample from him in a way that would not affect chain of custody. There would be no question and that's why I pointed out specifically that Eschweiler oversaw him pricking his finger and putting the gauze to the prick so that he could see and then collect the sample himself. So there was no chain of custody issue.
Well, and did they need the blood sample? Could they not have used a sweat sample from when he was working out if he was a type A secretor?
Yeah, but I guess that didn't sound as fun. As this dietary supplement. So Eschweiler actually also, he
took
said
anabolic steroids.
No, he said that he was not well vetted about this case. And he was like, I was kind of nervous because they just kind of threw me into this situation. And they were like, here's your story. Collect blood from this guy. And they gave him a little kit that he was supposed to just be like, oh, here, I've got this blood sample kit that I just carry around. And it was kind of...
Doesn't sound like a lot of planning went into this.
Right.
He did well given his preparation.
Right. Yeah. And then also I think because it was on gauze, I think that there is no way to definitively look, I know nothing, but there's no way to definitively determine if somebody is a secretor if their sample is collected on gauze, because gauze is absorbent. Like that was just so funny to me that it was gauze.
You shared a profoundly confounding case with me today. And while I did not like every step of
how we got justice,
yes, I am glad that Deliana and her family were able to receive some kind of peace. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that Sue remains in prison. And
they caught him in 29 days.
Which is impressive.
Yeah.
That's very impressive. And I hope they keep him caught for 29 times 3 more years.
Yeah, I couldn't find out anything past 2002 about his status.
Wow.
But technically, in 2007, he would have hit that 25-year mark.
Interesting.
2007 or 2008?
Look forward to the future update minisode where we talk about Sue.
No, it's 2007 because in 2002, they said he had been locked up for 19 years, that he had served 19 years.
I'm no mathematician.
Well, so it would be 2008.
Oh my God. Please stop doing this to yourself.
Well, I have to edit it so that I don't sound like a buffoon. A complete list of sources and any links can be found in the show notes.
And that's all we've got for this episode. If you enjoyed listening and want to hear more, please subscribe, give us a 5-star rating, and leave a review.
Recommend us to a friend and make sure you're following us at End of Crime Pod on Instagram.
Like us on Facebook at Until the End of Crime and join our discussion group.
Our email address is endofcrimepod@gmail.com. So send us an email with questions or episode suggestions.
Thank you for listening.
Until the next crime.